Hello and welcome back to District Dialogue, a podcast powered by the Community Foundation, where we're focused on highlighting voices shaping the future of education. This week, we're joined by Sheri Bonds, who is the Director of Career and Technical Education at Roundrock Independent School District. Sheri, first off, thank you for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Julian. Thanks so much for including me today. It's a little chilly in Texas. We don't usually get cold days, so I'm enjoying being inside.
I can relate. I'm a big outside heat type of guy, so I'm right now indoors as well, enjoying it. It's been a almost a full year. I know we're just about finishing up the first semester within education. I love to jump right in, not just in regards to some of your background, but where are you at right now as an educator, and, within the district as well. And so, feel free to start with really background as well, then kind of a snapshot of where you're at.
Yeah, will do. So thank you so much for letting me join you and your podcast today. I'm excited about this. This is either year 22 or 23. I'm so far in now. You stop counting, I think, after you hit 20, but I'm not at retirement, so I still got a
No
ways to
problem.
go.
Okay.
I actually started out here in Round Rock ISD as an agricultural science teacher at Stony Point High School.
Mm,
That's one of our now five high schools. When I was teaching in the district, it was our fourth high school. But I taught there for 7 years, everything from floral design to a little bit of welding. I was not very good at welding. I could show the kids how to do it, and then they did it much better than I did. But I did that for 7 years. And at about year five, I had that, am I going to be an educator forever? Is this really what I want to do? And thought about getting out altogether. But then I thought about it. I was looking for that next leadership opportunity to be
mhm.
able to have a larger impact. I loved my class and the 180 students a year or so that I worked with, but I wanted to see what I could do on a bigger scale. So I went and I got my master's, completed that in 2 years, got the opportunity to go to a much smaller district down the road, literally two ISDs next door, but a
Yeah.
very different group. So here in Round Rock, we're very diverse. We're now at about 47,000 students, run the gamut of super high affluent to economically disadvantaged Title I campuses. And the other
Mhm.
district I went to had a very small economically disadvantaged population, and it was a one high school district. So I
Got
really got that chance to see what it looks like to be in a smaller setting where change might happen a little faster, but with a very different population of kiddos. Then had the opportunity after being there for 4 years in college and career readiness to come back to Round Rock. And so I believe this is year 12 or so of being the CTE director in Round Rock ISD. Absolute best job ever, hence why I haven't left.
Yeah.
People always ask, you get that like 5 or 7 year itch. This job changes like every day with Texas Education Agency giving us new guidelines and rules. So no, I there is no boring day, but I'm really blessed to work with an amazing team. We've got some specialists, assistant director and work-based learning director, and so we're really blessed to be able to do the work that we need for our about 15,000 students within Round Rock ISD from 7th through 12th take a CTE class. So by the time our seniors graduate, 95% of them have taken at least one of our courses. So, and that may just be though anatomy and physiology, but at least they've had some experience with our program. But more than 46% of our students complete a program of study when they graduate in Round Rock ISD. So we're pretty proud of that number.
That's awesome. That's a great number. Yeah, you mentioned you already answered some of my other questions. Just to follow that piece up, I mean, with regard to first off, did you like getting out of the classroom? Then I heard you mention best job ever. I do, or I can't agree, and I've heard this being a recurring theme of this role with the CTE director being, kind of change ever presently changing, if that makes sense. And you mentioned not just within the region, but I'm thinking about all the different innovations within technology. First, it was cyber. Now it's chip manufacturing. It's all these different aspects. Agriculture is kind of come and gone, but now it's back with the full force as well. So I can understand how it changes. And then to your latter point as well, it sounds like there's not just a number of different programs that you all offer, but it's now that you're getting a chance to see what the full kind of district aspect looks like with more than one school. I'm sure that piece itself has incited you, or excuse me, provided you the insight with how to manage those different types of I would say challenges. And if you don't mind expounding on maybe what are some of those differences across one district now that you've gotten that experience.
Yeah.
perspective.
Sure. So it's like I said, it's been quite a few years since I was in that other smaller district.
Yeah,
But the differences are vast. You know, when you're in a small district, you get to put your hands in and work with lots of different programs. So when I was college and career readiness coordinator, I worked with CTE. I worked with our dropout prevention program. I before I left, I was over our Title One programs because we had one elementary and one middle school that were being serviced. And then right before I left, the next piece was going to be working with counseling services and taking that over. So the ability to learn so much quickly is amazing. But you're just scurrying all the time to try to figure it out. And that doesn't mean that in a large district, you're not scurrying to figure it out all the time. It's just you really focus in on your one target area. And so here it's career and technical education. Now we are adding in things like dual credit and P-Tech and some of those. And so it looks larger and broader.
yeah,
But one of the things that I miss is that direct connection with lots of other groups. Right now, it's really tangential, right? Like I work with advanced academics regularly, but I'm not working with those teachers in advanced academics. You know, when I was working in the smaller district, I worked with lots of teachers and departments on a daily basis. So that's
right.
a little bit different. So there are some times where I'm thankful that I get to just focus on CTE and because
Yeah,
that's my passion, right? That's where I came from. But then I miss, there are other things that I'm not learning about maybe in different avenues to help me grow. So then in turn I can help grow my team and my teachers so that when they want to move into leadership roles. But Round Rock is really good about making sure that we are outside of our silos and working with each other. I work with some of the greatest administrators in the state. They are amazing people, both here at central office and on campus. So we work well together. And I'm a connector. I like to meet people. I like to network and figure out how we can help each other out. So I'm not the fly on the wall in a room. I'm the one that's kind of out on trying to connect and figure things out. And so
there you go. Yeah,
I get out of my silo, but there are times, man, where I might have my head down and not and be a bit oblivious to what's going on for a little bit. But I try to not be there and connect with everybody else and make sure I know what's going on. And because some little changes might be happening in one area and someone else might not think, well, that would impact CTE, but it may. And so if I can make sure I'm aware and hearing some of that information, just in case it does impact our team or our kiddos.
yeah, and that's actually a very cool kind of comment that you mentioned just now as well, with regards to just paying attention to those few impactful areas that might be hidden, or less prevalent. What does that look like in regards to a real use case example? I might have an idea of what that looks like, but if you don't mind expounding on that, I'd love to learn more.
Yeah. So let's see. One might be with like dual credit. If there's a partner who maybe wants to come in and work with our district, and they send that information just straight to the advanced academics director, which she and I happen to be friends.
Mhm.
But if they sent it to her and not thinking about CTE, that we might want to work with that partner. So one of our universities in Texas, Tarleton State, is actually starting more of a dual enrollment program, and they're trying to grow their opportunities with other school districts. And so it just so happened I was by somebody's desk and they said, "Oh, well, we sent this MOU to advanced academics." I was like, whoa, hang on. I was the one that asked for it. So just being able to get out and around and making sure that I'm hearing all of those things. Yeah, attendance issues might pop up. And so being aware of those, because someone might think, well, it doesn't impact CTE. Well, in the state of Texas, we gain all of our funding for general classes and CTE classes based off of attendance. It's not just being enrolled in a school district.
Okay.
It's actually if you as a student are only attending 70% of the time, but another student is attending 95% of the time, those students are actually going to bring in different dollar amounts for the school district, not only for general classes, but also CTE classes. So just some of those things, they kind of, not everybody always thinks about it and how
Mhm.
it impacts every single department. And that's where we as directors or other department leaders just need to be aware and keep our ear to the ground and pick up that information.
See, that's actually very insightful. Just to give you a little background or more about our listeners, this consists of other educators, aspiring educators, those who might be in more of the youth development adjacent space, whether they're coming from Boys and Girls Clubs or YMCA environments as well. So I love the fact that you mentioned that. That's a huge call out, or kind of an opportunity rather, with regards to, if we know that student attendance is essential for program success. We've been challenged in some of our partnerships with organizations like a Boys and Girls Club, or even some of our earlier partners like Baltimore City Schools, with, okay, can we create a program for the sake of engagement that we know then stems or stimulates that conversation regarding career exploration and, of course, skill development. And
Yeah.
quite literally, that's the vein, or the kind of the space that we live in, using interest-based touch points such as gaming as the topic of the day, is what I say, at least. Because sometimes it's gaming, sometimes it's TikTok, sometimes it's anime, but we can talk about the design, the narrative design, the graphic design, as well as the other disciplines that fall into each of those different kind of skill sets, um, and that in and of itself creates that consistent engagement on behalf of the student participants, to the
Mhm.
point where, like I mentioned, prior to us getting started, we kind of sneak in the medicine with the dessert,
Yeah.
which you know even for students as young as middle school, we always say, okay, who's heard of the thing called esports? And hands go up, and we say, who wants to do that? And we, hands stay up. We say, great. Now you're going to be the ones bringing it to life, right? And
Yeah.
so from one discipline or another, whether it's marketing, event operations, IT, they each get to take responsibility in regards to a role that they contribute back to the very thing that they used to, or previously only understood how to just consume rather to contribute. And
Mhm.
so I love that. And again, I live that, which is why I can expound on that quite well
Yeah.
in this regard. Um, but I think that's a great way to go in regards to, again, creating that engagement. And it seems like, to your comment that you also made again prior to the show starting, really having your finger on the pulse, having done the CTE role now for so many years, is not only changing on a regular basis, but I think some of those changes gives you a kind of like a more awareness around what opportunities that may also align with as well. And
Sure.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I mentioned a few areas earlier, but if you don't mind sharing, what are some of those other, from like an industry or a disciplinary perspective, changes that have recently taken place, within the Round Rock region or the Texas region as in general?
Sure. So, we all lived, whether we want to remember it or not, we all lived through COVID, and the shutdown, and everybody worrying about getting, microchips and processors and semiconductors brought to Texas. So we are very fortunate that Samsung has invested a huge mega site in Taylor. It's two school districts over. So from my office to their new mega site is probably about a 25-minute drive in traffic, and it is huge. Our family lived not far from there, and when we thought, I was an ag teacher, right? I said that I'm a country girl. I want to live out. I don't want to be in the city. I come to the city and work, but I want to live outside of town. And so when that first crane popped up, we said, we've got to move a little further out. So we did. But it's amazing. And the amount of workers that Samsung is going to need to be able to meet their semiconductor requirement is, it's not even fathomable. And so they're working with school districts all around. First, immediately with Taylor ISD, right? Because that's where they're living.
Right.
But they're growing out beyond that. And so we actually are in the process of planning a first CTE center for Roundrock ISD. Right now, all of our programs are campus based.
Hmm.
Students can apply if there's room to move to a program at another high school if it's not offered at theirs, but we've never had anything central. So we're going to open that. The plan is fall of 2027. And at that new space, we'll actually have a semiconductor program of study that we'll embark on with Austin Community College, and they're working with different semiconductor and manufacturing companies in our area. We'll also start electrical trades. We have general construction at one of our high schools, but we're going to ramp up and focus on electrical trades. That's one that our students consistently ask for. And then auto body collision. We have auto mechanics, fixing the inside of your car, but now we're going to work on the aesthetics of your car. So we'll add auto body and collision repair. And then we'll also offer cosmetology. Cosmetology hasn't been in Round Rock ISD in a very long time, probably 25 years plus.
Wow.
And some people, want to push back and say, oh, well, that's not very high skill or high wage. I'm just going to say, Julian, you have a very nice haircut. I
Thank
don't know
you.
what you pay for yours. I know I
Yep.
pay a lot of money for this. It is not low skill and low wage. If I get the wrong
Um,
color color up these grays, Miss Vicky and I are going to have problems.
Yeah.
So we're just looking for new opportunities for kids. But even before that, in the last bond proposal that we had as a school district, we started robotics, cybersecurity, and drone aviation for our students, and
Oh,
that's
cool.
wonderful. Engaging new opportunities for our kids. We're blessed to have so many students within Roundrock ISD that are engaged in CTE. We've got about 15,000 students from 7th to 12th grade that are enrolled in our CTE classes. So we have plenty of students to go around.
Yeah.
Going back to that case of the smaller one high school district I was in, it's really hard to offer 30 programs of study in one high school, not having as many students, because to your point earlier, you were talking about engagement and getting kids in. Kids, they want to be engaged in high school, and not all of the required subjects are their thing that's going to get them excited, right? We find
Yeah.
a lot of times that CTE is what keeps them in school and keeps them coming every day. So if we
Yeah.
can get them involved in a program of study, and program of studies change over time. Some that have sunsetted over the years due to a lack of student interest, because everything that we do lives and dies by how many kids are requesting classes.
Mhm.
So some have left. Interior design is exciting and wonderful, but the student interest decreased, and so that's a program of study over time that has been sunsetted. So we're always looking for what is our community telling us, what are our students saying that they're wanting, what is our workforce data saying that they need, but it's a balancing act. Something that's desperately needed is IT. Anything within IT, but especially cabling, pulling and running cabling with the amount of construction we have in Central Texas is
Mhm.
desperate. That's really hard to sell to a 14 or 15-year-old that this is an exciting career. Come learn about running and pulling Cat 5 cable. So we're always trying to figure out how to make things more interesting. But even if they fall into or pick a program of study that they stick with for 4 years, we
Mhm.
know that it may not be what they're going to ultimately decide to study or get a career in after high school. But they're going to learn employability skills and learn how to be a better employee, putting their cell phones down, how to look someone in the eye and carry on a conversation. Those things that in other without getting involved in something. And it doesn't have to be CTE in high school, it can be anything, it can be athletics, it can be fine arts, but
Mhm.
finding that hook for the kiddos. So if we can kind of triangulate that between what students want, what the community says we need, and workforce data, then hopefully we can connect more kids for future success. But
Yeah.
we have so many students who take health science. They absolutely love it. It's wonderful. It's one of our largest programs. They're not all going to be going in and like operating and giving shots to kids in doctors' offices. We know that, but they'll be better consumers of the healthcare system. So
That's very true.
there's different ways to think about it. Yes, workforce development for all kids would be amazing to hook them in, but they're children. They are still children. Heck, when we watch college football on the weekend and you see a football player that's 22 years old and they're like, he's just a kid, be nice. They're all still kids. There's some days I'm lying. I know what I wanted. I know what I want to do. This is my job. But I've got
Yeah.
lots of friends that are my age, in mid 40s, are like, when I grow up, I don't know what I want to be. Some kids find it right away, and others, it's okay just to explore and try new things.
Yeah, I think that's a very appropriate perspective. To your point, the youth at that age. Now you mentioned the athlete; they're 20 something, but our
Yeah.
students are still 6, 7 years removed from that as well. So it's
Yeah.
like they're even, yeah, they know just their world. Um, I love that. And you mentioned a couple of components in regards to what really drives decision making, from student engagement as well as what the community input looks like. I also heard you mention the Austin, I believe, Community College as well. You know, as the director, I'm imagining that's your role to really, navigate and navigate, I believe is the appropriate word, the conversation that really drives what those decisions looks like with those different stakeholders. How, I guess, frequent are you to touching base with what the community or what the local industry is looking for, as well as the local education, the higher education ed stakeholders, as a director within the region.
Yeah. So it looks different depending on who the entity is. Our Round Rock Chamber, we work with them, we're meeting with them quite often, multiple times throughout the year, partnering on different initiatives like our teacher externship, or when we need advisory partners for our meetings that we have throughout the year, they're always helping us find and connect with people within the community. So they're a huge one that we work with quite often. Austin Community College, we definitely do as we're growing our dual credit opportunities and trying to get our faculty listed as adjuncts. I think I mentioned we started a P-TECH program, that Pathways to Technical Early College High School.
Yes.
We have an ECHS in Round Rock that I think we're on our fifth or sixth cohort that's about to graduate, but P-TECH, we're only in our sophomore year. So we've got very young kiddos in that program. But that is with ACC, Austin Community College, and then St. David's HCA, one of our hospital providers in the area. And we're working on an LVN program. So that group, that core group that's designing that, they're meeting every other week to tackle issues and making sure that we're on the right track. So it
Wow.
really just depends on what the program is. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that Workforce Solutions, which is an arm of the Texas Workforce Commission, they're our local, our rural capital area. We're
Hmm.
working with them constantly. They're the ones providing our labor market data. Round Rock, if people have never seen us on a map, it's not really somewhere they'd probably look at, but we are just north of Austin. So Austin is in Travis County, and we are in Williamson County. And so we can actually look at two different workforce boards with data from Austin, and then also our a little bit more rural Williamson County. Round Rock is not rural. There's nothing rural. We are totally suburban, but
Right.
just outside of our reaches by a few miles, you can start to get into rural areas. So our student opportunities look vast and different. And so we
Mhm.
do have to engage with lots of different people. We're also fortunate that the Texas State Technical College is in one town over. It's right in our backyard. And this year we actually started a manufacturing program of study with them. So we're busing our
Nice.
students for the first time for dual credit with manufacturing. So there's lots of different groups that we get to work with, and it just varies on what our needs on how often we get to interact with everybody. But we're really lucky that in this area everyone sees a need for growth and increased workforce and skills, and
Yep.
so everyone is ready to come to the table and help each other out. So that's always great. We're very blessed.
I love that as well. I'm glad that you're seeing more of it. I'm starting to see, I guess maybe because I'm uh, skewed to asking about it, a lot more of engagement and, buy-in, I think is a better word as it relates to just the need and the relevance of the different training that can take place, right there at the high school level as well. Um, I love to hear just all those places. That's great. That's exciting. And I really wanted to ask what maybe the perspective from the student looks like, if you can help paint that picture. I understand you mentioned, their engagement, they kind of vote with their feet, if you will, in regards to which direction they may pursue. But what other kind of experiences could you share that they would go through, whether it's a part of the enrollment or the hands-on? I'm imagining there's probably that, kind of theory that leads into practical application. Walk us through that student, point of view, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So our students first engage with us in middle school if they're here with us.
Okay.
We have CTE offerings in seventh and eighth grade. We're doing some adjustments for next year. We'll actually be starting a required seventh grade class for our students called Navigating Your Future. So in the
Mhm.
fall semester, they'll be learning all about our different program opportunities, and in the spring, they'll be developing a business plan, but it's going to be themselves. So they'll be working on
How
their
cool.
4 year plan, thinking about what it is that they want to be when they grow up. And again, at what a seventh grader thinks of, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of YouTubers, TikTokers,
Uh,
professional
mhm.
athletes, all of that thing. But we'll try to connect it to what we offer in programs of study. Again, not that they're stuck in that, but so they have an endpoint and can map it back into what that they need to do to be prepared in eighth grade, all through high school, whether that's electives they can take, maybe looking at advanced coursework, whether in math and science, if they want to go into engineering or healthcare, whatever that case may be.
Mhm.
Then in eighth grade, they'll have a couple of different electives that hit our largest target areas within CTE to enroll in, things like engineering, computer science, business, graphics, all things graphics, from game design to video production and everything. Then once they get to eighth or high school and they actually start picking their courses, all of our electives within CTE are arranged in academies. We're not wall to wall academies, if anybody is familiar with what that term means, where it's small pockets of kids and they all move together kind of in a herd and their core teachers are the same. We're too large to be able to do that, honestly. And in Texas, our band and athletics classes are during the day. It's during the day and outside of the day. And so trying to master schedule around that just makes it really difficult. But again, we talked about that's something that brings the kids to school and keeps them. So I would not advocate to get rid of that. But our students make a selection for their freshman year to start a program of study. Most of them offer at least 1 or 2 credits throughout the 4 years. Some of our programs can end a little earlier, maybe within 3 years, just depending on what they are. But they start off with a principal's levels class, a good general overview of lots of careers within that area, such as principles of business, marketing, and finance. That leads into those 3 very distinct programs that our students can take, but a good general foundation, and then they pick one of those fields to actually focus in on. We do try to end with practicums where kids are actually getting out and working in the community. Those instances, though, those classes are double block classes, and not all of our students have room in their schedule, maybe, especially if they're taking advanced courses or if they honestly want to prioritize an off period and maybe go work. I can't blame a kid for wanting to have a part-time job. I mean, that's what CT is about. It's all about employability skills and working.
Yeah,
So we have a variety of pathways for students within our programs, but our goal is to get them in, get them hooked. Love that content that they're teaching. So many times we'll say that kids don't pick classes, they pick teachers. If they get that teacher who motivates them and excites them, they may not see them again for a couple of years within the program of study. But if that teacher has turned them on to whatever that content is, they're more likely to stay. So we work with our teachers a lot on professional
I love
development
that.
to make classes engaging and all of that. Outside of the classroom, our students are going to see the opportunity to compete in career and tech student organizations like FFA, DECA, HOSA, some
Mhm.
of those organizations, Skills USA, all the letters. We've got all of
Yeah, yeah,
them
yeah.
for our kiddos to participate in. We also offer them leadership opportunities outside of that within our Academy ambassadors. So I would love to say I could go into a class and talk to a kid about why they need to learn about agriculture, but a seventh grader doesn't want to hear from me. They want to hear from a high school kid that looks more like them or is closer in age. And
Yeah.
so we use those high school academy ambassadors to do outreach into our middle schools and elementaries so that we can engage students earlier with some of our content. But then on the flip side, we also offer those ambassadors opportunities to engage with our business partners. So we actually have advisory meetings multiple times a year. So talking about that touch point about how we stay engaged, that's where we actually invite specific and targeted industry partners that are working within our community to come in, meet one-on-one in small groups with 1 or 2 business partners, our program lead teacher within that program of study, and then a couple of kids. So the
Mhm.
kids get to start to understand what it feels like to work with professionals, because talking to a teacher, again, they see them every day, every other day. They start to become more of like they think a friend. We are not your friends, we are your teachers.
No,
But they get a little more comfortable, right? But when
yeah.
you put them in front of a business partner, maybe a kid who's an aspiring engineer, and an
Mhm.
engineer from Samsung is sitting across from him and telling him, well, this is my path. It wasn't perfect. I didn't study engineering in high school, or this is my second career, whatever the case may be. Just for kids to get to hear that and then learn how to interact a little bit more, develop those elevator pitches and all of that. So we're excited that our kids get a couple of different touch points, working out in the community with career preparation classes. Is it perfect? No. Does every kid get that experience? No. We're always trying to grow that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we are not saying that we are done. There's no like put a stamp on it, mail it off. We're always working to try to develop it, but if kids want to get involved, we have opportunities for them to do more than just within their classroom.
I think that's great. And you mentioned really just so many pieces that paint that picture as it relates to just their kind of role from start all the way to what completion looks like. And I think it's great in some regards they get a chance to your point, whether they're working or kind of learning or training, get a chance to again think about their career, not just what's the grade of each class that they're in. So definitely something that I know every time I see something cool, it's always that feeling that comes of, man, I wish they had this when I was a student, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's the cool part about at least my work, but I'm sure yours as well. Of let me make sure I fill all those gaps, maybe that I recognized or that I now recognize, to again just make sure every individual has that pathway to success as well. Um, the kind of next direction I want to go is really towards the teachers. You mentioned all the different pathways, even like you mentioned yourself. It's not ideal to think that you can speak to each discipline. So how do you all really kind of gauge within the district kind of which teachers are learning or offering which programs? Is that based on just something that's school wide, or is that specific district wide, or specific to a school single site? Walk me through the distribution of the different subject matter experts, if you will, and how do
Yeah.
they upskill? How do they stay up to now up to date on their insight as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So our we have five academies within the district. Four of those are CTE, and within that is that 30 programs of study. Some of our high schools may only have 12 programs of study because they might be a little bit smaller, and students are more focused on AP and IB classes. And some of
Got
our
it.
other campuses may have up to 20 programs of study. And so within those programs, it really depends on student interest, like we were talking about how many teachers are needed within Texas. And I don't know the listeners that might hear this what it looks like for teacher credentialing and certification in other areas, but we have a variety of CTE certifications. So the teacher certification has to match the class right and the programs that are associated with it. So that's where student interest is going to drive how many teachers we need. Do we have enough within that high school when campuses get an opening? Does that need to be a CTE teacher they're hiring for a particular content area? So the campuses are definitely playing a game of Tetris with trying to fit their teachers in to all of the spots. We work on the side of support with that, of trying to make sure that if a teacher needs to gain another certification, we help them out with study materials and reimbursing them for passing exams and those kind of
Yes.
things.
Yes.
But it really falls on the campus. Now, when it comes to new programs of study or maybe sunsetting, we definitely work with them on that. And then if teachers need to shift around, but within Texas and the way our ISD works is a teacher applies at a particular high school and they're going to be there until they don't want to be, or maybe the campus doesn't want to be, but they'll be there. And so finding the right spot for them. Man, something else that you said, oh, teachers and how we help them with training and upskilling. So
Hmm.
there's a couple of different things. Once you get hired with us, whether you are straight out of college, you've always known you wanted to be a high school CTE teacher, or maybe this is your second profession. We actually require all of our teachers all the time, every year, to do 3 days of professional development with us before the school year starts. So
Love it.
most teachers in Texas are on a 187-day calendar. So if they need to
Hmm.
report back to work on August 1st, our teachers are coming back 3 days earlier. We provide a stipend. They receive a $2,500 stipend to do those 3 days. And then at the end of the school year, 2 days of curriculum writing. So once you've seen the full year, how did the curriculum work? Do we need to adjust it? Whatever. But within those 3 days, we're going over general stuff, the things that you just have to do, like here's how you spend your money, here's how you fill out proper paperwork. But then we try to get all of that stuff out of the way and get into the nitty gritty of, especially for our new teachers, what does classroom management look like within CTE? Because our class is going to look very different in a lab setting than maybe an English class, right?
Yeah.
More organized chaos of welders and cutting torches and all of that kind of stuff. So helping them figure out, like, how do I realistically manage 20 kids with torches in their hands? Yeah, yeah. And then we'll branch into other very specific areas. We do a lot of software work within our programs. And so maybe having a professional from Adobe coming in and giving updates to those related teachers about what it is that they need to know. Part of the time in those 3 days is we set aside one morning to take them on field trips because we want our teachers to go on field trips with our kids. We force our
How
teachers to
cool.
go on field trips. So they get to pick.
Yeah.
We usually have about 15 to 18 different sites within our community that they can go to.
Yeah.
And our staff gets on the bus and we go with them. Roundrock Express is our local AAA. Oh my gosh, if I got the wrong amount of A's within how many, they're minor league baseball affiliated with the Rangers. I don't know if they're single or AAA. Which one's the higher? Do you know, Julian? I'm putting me on the spot.
I don't.
Any
I actually don't know, and I need to.
Okay. Well,
We
good. You
just,
make me feel better about myself.
yeah,
They're an amazing partner. They host us every year, and it's not just about learning. Well, ticket sales. It's about everything behind the scenes of marketing, running the video boards, how they engage with the community, what their culinary features look like. So our teachers can see all of that and bring it back into the classroom. They get to go to Dell or maybe the Toyota dealership in our area, and we don't
nice.
require, only our automotive teachers can go to Toyota. No, anybody can go because we want our kids to know about all of the different opportunities. So
That's
I
great.
personally got to go to Amatrine on this last visit. And if you've never heard of them, you got to look them up. It's basically the Harry Potter invisibility cloak, but for the military. So being someone formerly in the military, you may be interested. They're right here in our backyard. I mean, literally, we saw a video and I couldn't take any pictures. I didn't have my phone, but two guys walking down in infrared, and all of a sudden one disappears because he put their cloak on. It was pretty amazing. And
Wow.
because of that, this week, one of our teachers who went on that, she took a field trip of her senior career prep kids to go and visit, and they learned about internships and different opportunities. So we try to get the teachers out as much as possible. And then we also do a teacher externship program. That's in conjunction with the Workforce Commission and then also the Roundrock Chamber. We usually partner up about 75 teachers every summer, sometimes counselors, sometimes AP, but 75 staff members that are secondary. It's not just CTE, that's open to anybody, core
That's
teachers,
awesome.
athletics, whoever wants to go. They receive a stipend to go and spend a couple of days in a business, and then they report back what they've learned to their campus. So again, this stuff changes so quick that we've got to stay up to date. And
Yeah.
we need the teachers to be as up to date as possible, right? I can learn all kinds of information, but I'm not directly giving it to the kids. So we've got to keep the teachers engaged.
That's amazing. I think that's so that the externship piece really catches my eye. I think that's great because it provides that direct immersion, if you will, for the very individual that's going to have, 4 or 5 times a day to influence, the next generation as well. Um, wow, that's great. That's actually thorough as well in regards to the ways that you all support and really prepare educators and teachers across the district at large. And I definitely understand how some schools also might have a higher focus on, like you mentioned, AP and honors programming versus, the, 20 at another site that might be much more focused on CTE as well. Um, that gives us a it's proper kind of a way and snapshot of the here now and present. I love to get a little bit hopeful if you don't mind. To love to dig into where the direction of where CTE is going. Of course, I mentioned for us our goal is to really shed some light in regards to the positive aspects and really just a deeper dive within not just CTE itself but project based learning. And I'd say a lot of non-degree programs as it relates to just an area that has relevance as well. But what are you seeing that's changing, whether it's directly related to the CTE, kind of policy or kind of, I would say, kind of top-down kind of management, and or we kind of covered some of the areas as it relates to the disciplines, but maybe even just the methodology that might be changing as well. If you don't mind shedding a light on
Yeah.
what the future looks like.
Yeah, so I think right now is one of the brightest times in CTE that we've had in a very long time. The pendulum in education always swings, and now I feel like we're somewhere in the middle, if not going a little further more towards CTE. I tell folks a lot of times, when they say that, oh, I wish I had that when I was in school. Yeah, it would have been cool. Now is definitely a great time to be a student. And most people, of a certain age or older, they think of like vocational, and they think of those kids at that other campus. They weren't going
Yep.
to be anything. They couldn't go to college. And that is absolutely not what career and technical education is today.
Exactly.
95% of our kids have taken a CTE class in Round Rock before they graduate. So it is almost literally every single kid within the school district is engaged, because no matter if you're going to go straight into the workforce or if you're going to college and to get a major, whatever it is, most people are not independently wealthy to go to college just for the sake of learning. They're going to college because eventually they want to turn that into a career of some sort. Um, so being able to offer those for our kids, and again in this like I said, this ripe time for CTE, now students are thinking about it. Is the ROI, that return on investment, really there with a 4-year degree in
Yes, they are. Yeah.
in in a variety of majors. I'm not going to, poke at any, but some are more practical, and there's a direct link to a career and earning back what I need to pay back student loans or make it reasonable to be able to afford college, where other kids are saying, you know what? I can do college, but maybe I don't want to. Maybe I want to enter an apprenticeship. And so, where I think before the stigma of society was, oh, you're not going to college? Will you be successful? And parents still have
Yeah,
that, right? But at least in the education space, we're seeing that more people are becoming comfortable with that. And I think something that's going to push that even further into parents' comfort zones is AI, right? Everyone is thinking about, how is AI going to impact my future career opportunities?
yeah,
You think about jobs that can't be AI'd out. I mean, you might have a computer program that is going to plan out this elaborate and wonderful electrical scheme for a building or for a home, but an electrician still has to go put their hands on it to actually put it together or troubleshoot it until there are robots. I don't know. They're probably going to be one day, and that's when I hope I'm not here. But kids are thinking about that, and that's starting to push families into defining success for their kids differently, because we still encounter those folks when we do our annual climate survey of, how likely are you to promote trades or apprenticeships for students? Oh, yes, for your own or others. Oh, well, for somebody else's kid. It's okay for someone else, but my
oh
kid has
wow,
to go to college. So there's that balance, and there's definitely benefits, right, of going to college. There's that going out into the world with kids and students that are in that same experiential level of age and life experiences and growing up together. I
yep,
think about that for my own kids. We've got a daughter in seventh grade and a son in second grade. And if either of them says, hey, I want to go to 2 year school, or I want to just go and get an apprenticeship, it'll be a question of, well, what do I think about my, maybe 18-year-old son, like going out and working on the job site? And if he's ready for that,
right,
still a kid. But I think once you get in a career, you're less of being looked at as a kid, than that kid in college or on that football team, like we talked about. So I think it's a balance, and people need to figure it out. But more and more, the idea of career in tech is, it's on the forefront, whether you see it, whether you agree with everybody's politics or not. But at
mhm,
the federal level, it's talked about more. At our state level, it's definitely talked about more, and workforce needs. So I like that it's not those kids on that campus as
yep,
much. And we've been lucky in Round Rock, it hasn't been seen that way for too long, but it still exists. When you walk in school district buildings, 99% of the people within the building have at least a bachelor's, if not more. And so
right.
it's hard even for staff to think about defining success without that credential. So otherwise, I think we're in a good spot, but we'll see what the future holds.
Okay, yeah, and I'm just as optimistic. And to your point, though, I have recognized some of the same, just that, like you mentioned, the pendulum kind of aspect. I think is a perfect call out here. Same, kind of sway of opinions that come with into consideration with regard to the conversation being centered around CTE training. Like you mentioned, yeah, we want it in the district, but not for my child. But
Yeah.
at the same time, they mentioned at the Department of Labor level that there's going to be a shortage of 500,000 technicians within the plumbing and electrical field, and that's just a wake up call, not just to say, okay, I'm going to be a plumber, but we share and always advocate. How about thinking through, instead of just owning a job, how you can own a system or a business that
Yes.
then you have a team of plumbers, and now you're focused on running that business, but you
Yep.
understand the trade and the business acumen that necessary, whether it's that electrical, to your point earlier, cosmetology. I think even that aspect, you don't have to be the exact technician. You should know a little bit about the arts or skill set, but you could be the individual that's focused on managing the product or the service. Um, yeah, very,
Exactly. Yeah.
very appropriate way to, kind of convey that. And I think that, really with educators like yourself on the front lines, keeping that mindset, I guess just possible and plausible, keeping that possibility of available with this type of training is key. So first off, thank you if I haven't said it already. But I think that's, I'm just as optimistic about, this being something that more organizations, more individuals are going to start to recognize as viable, routes to success.
Mhm.
Uh, let me see. I've kind of explored a few different areas, and before we go, I've got maybe one or two different topics I want to broach here because, as you mentioned earlier, AI was something that can't escape the conversation.
Yeah,
It definitely is something that even within the fields of, let's just use the same examples, plumbing, electrical, heck, even more of the traditional construction. There are roles now that are being augmented with these types of tools
oh
when it
sure.
comes to assessment, evaluation. So it's still about understanding the relevant use cases for these different tools. How is Round Rock responding to AI? How do you feel about it as a parent and educator? And do you yourself use it at any level? I'd love to kind of just get a snapshot on what the AI integration looks like in your region in Round Rock.
Yeah. So I went to a training. This is probably now 2 or 3 years ago with a local organization that brought in lots of different groups to be able to talk about AI and using it. And it wasn't school district focused. It was about professional organizations and how they might be able to use it. And the one thing that I loved that I heard, and I'm curious if it still holds true, was how do we use AI and those kind of tools so that we can free up everyone's time to be more creative, right? Like use it
Yeah,
to get the page dirty or throw the idea out, like in graphic design. Or in my case, if I want to start, if I need to write a manual on something or write, processes and procedures, get Gemini or ChatGPT or Perplexity or whichever one is your favorite one to
yep,
help
yep,
you out to get some of that and start to finesse it in that way. So I think as long as we use it to work smarter, I think there is a lot of fear that it's going to potentially replace some aspects, right? And I think
right,
we'll start to see that. And so how do we have those conversations with kids? I would say we've tackled it. We haven't. It's so new and is happening so quickly, and we don't get to see our teachers often enough.
right.
But that's one of the things to talk about. Slowly, we're being able to integrate it within the school district, right? Because software and data privacy is just, it's huge when you think about how much data is held within a school district of 47,000 students, about 8,000 employees, and all of that personal information. You got to
Oof.
make sure everybody can get through the firewall, or doesn't get through your firewall, I guess, and make
Yep,
sure
yep.
they're protecting. So we've been slow to turn on AI in certain ways for our kids. Our staff have more access. But it's something that we're tackling. We've got a team within the district of a couple of different departments that have that conversation, but it's not easy. People are using it to write lessons and curriculum or challenge ways of thinking. But I think with anything, just like when the internet came out and it became, you could ask any question and you automatically got an answer
Yep,
of, oh,
yep.
2 plus 2 is 5. Well, no, wait, is it actually 5? Or did you go back and look and really it's 2 plus 2 is 4? It's the same thing with AI. You can
Mhm.
give it a prompt, but just because you get information, did you fact check it? Did you make sure it's accurate? So I think for us, helping our kids to realize and see that, but then the fun ways to use it creatively of putting in a picture and put the dog head on my friend's body. I mean, that's fun and creative, and I love seeing that aspect for kids. But when it comes down to the actual information of things, how do we teach them to be savvy consumers of that information and
Yep.
still know to fact check and don't just take it at face value? So because the certain ways you write prompts depends on how you get answers and responses. So
Entirely, absolutely. And I think that's exactly what I was going to highlight is just even for myself, because I use it a lot of times. So just as I ideate to your point to get a lot of the ideas out, but a lot of times I'll prompt in it to say, this is what I'm thinking and help me break down how I could better articulate that for next time. So that way it even helps me say, well, what you shared was this, but you lacked context or the appropriate framing or tone. And I now am going to follow up to ask what's the tone of this because you didn't include that. And so, and that itself shaped how quickly I feel like I can learn. I think I'm a little bit more dutiful as it relates to even spell check. If I see it trying to correct me, I'll type it all the way out. But sometimes instead of just double tapping space or hitting the tab button, I'm like that feels still like cheating. So again, maybe I'm a little old school in that regard. But for the AI use case, I'm like, from a productivity perspective, it's not avoidable. It really does, change the amount uh, of what you can turn around, whether you're on the creative side, admin side, doesn't matter. But really, what I look for is how could this improve my understanding on a regular basis? So, like you mentioned, if it's giving me something, if I'm expecting four to come out as a response to two plus two and it gives me five, I've even primed and prepared myself to say, well, what have I been missing? How can I be more aware of how to articulate or convey ideas? And so when I see a response that doesn't align, I'll start to even be more aware. So, quick and easy kind of way for someone to really apply it. And I think there's always that adoption conversation that will live on. But to your point, the data privacy piece, I'm learning now, even as I further get involved with, national organizations, and we have to do the single sign-on type programming, or
Yes.
programming from like a development perspective. Yeah, it teaches you a lot, and it helps you understand where those vulnerabilities lie as well. So no, I'm glad to hear that you all are integrating it. Let me ask, as an individual, how do you like AI? Are you using it at all? Whether it's just on, like you mentioned, kind of fact checking, or does it help you turn out any kind of ideas? Walk me through maybe your
Oh
own
yeah.
personal.
I spend a lot of time on this computer. I mean, it's like a second arm, I don't, or a third arm, I guess.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
there's a lot of time, and a lot of that is spent responding to emails, reading emails, all the things, or creating, procedures and steps and things for our department. So
Mhm.
using AI to maybe start an email response and say, like you were talking about that ideation, like make this sound a little more professional, or
Yeah,
okay, that you went a little too far, Sheri. Like bring it back, make it sound a little nicer. Oh yeah, I love to use it that way. Just trying to work smarter, not harder, is my biggest thing. Sometimes I forget about it, but luckily I've got some amazing folks that work on my team. Um, Recently, I used it. We've been using app scripting. One of Laura on our team, she's all about it. She's trying to help me.
nice.
Again, our whole department work smarter, not harder.
Yeah,
And I to develop our teacher budgets. It's called a per pupil allotment, basically how many kids are sitting in a class, and certain classes have higher needs, and so there's a higher dollar amount associated with the course. And it used to be a little Sherry old school, finding all of that kind of class and clicking and dragging the dollar amount all the way down and making my formulas. And she was like, let me help you with Gemini. And so I put in my prompt, it wrote an app script, I uploaded it, and it did all my math for me. And so
wow.
rather than spending, however many hours, it did it in like 10 minutes of writing the right prompt for it. So I don't think of it. It's not my first thing every
Mhm.
day of, oh, how am I going to use AI? But when it does come up, I'm like, pretty appreciative that that's there. Because if it does free up that time so that I can tackle things, either that are pressing or just being able to be more efficient, and then
Yep.
hopefully maybe having a better work life balance. I think everybody is still trying to figure that out these days, but
Yes, I was going
yeah.
to mention that, especially within your role or anyone's within education, considering how quickly things are innovating and changing. And it seems like that's the biggest challenge for any stakeholder within the education, whether it's higher ed, or especially higher ed, in my opinion, or K 12, of that, okay, we've gotten our systems down, but now we got to get systems around this new subject matter, or this new topic, or this new
Yeah.
space. But I agree, if we can help get a little bit of that work life balance back because we can stay up to date, that's a win. But it's always about appropriate usage. So I think you've kind of conveyed or spoken to a great kind of concept of that as well. Before we jump, I did want to give you the chance to really just highlight some of the successes and wins of Round Rock. I've heard a little bit in regards to the different offerings, and then of course the engagement. I can understand how that piece itself drives. But I'd love to hear some of the things that you're most proud of or excited about, or even some of the exact feedback that you might have heard from industry, community partners, or the students themselves.
Yeah, thank you. It's always nice to brag on all of the work that the team and the teachers are doing for the kids. Round Rock is really a special place. It's an amazing community to work within. I think I mentioned I don't live here because I live out of town. I'm a country girl, just a few miles down the road.
Yeah,
But it's amazing, and we're blessed to be able to work here. We have teachers who are choosing this to be their second career. They've had a lifelong career in health sciences in some way within healthcare, or engineering or computer science, and now they want to come and give back. So being able to recruit those teachers and bring those experience into our classroom, I think that is huge for us, so that we're, to your point earlier about how do you keep your teachers up to date, if we can keep bringing in folks that are industry relevant, I guess, their
yeah,
experience, that's always wonderful. Our our teachers and team are winning awards like the District of Distinction for the Career and Tech Association of Texas. We've won it 2 years in a row now. They just started that last year, and so that really is a highlight of what this CTE team is doing to support our teachers, and our
Mhm.
teachers in turn taking that to pour into those 15,000 students that are engaging in our programs. From kids winning international competitions within DECA or HOSA, over the summer months, and being able to compete at levels that I can't even imagine, in content that I don't understand. But knowing that we've got people that are supporting them so the kids can grow. So much of what teachers do now is facilitating the learning, right? The Charlie
Right.
Brown wah 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 teacher days are over. Kids have at their fingertips within their cell phones or on their computers and devices more information than we ever thought about having. So thinking of one person being that singular I know all, it doesn't happen anymore. We give them just enough to be
Yeah.
dangerous and to jump out. So having those teachers that are working with our students that are seeing success and becoming leaders in our community, that's what I'm most proud of. Being able to serve on boards or being a certain level of office in this or that. For myself, that's cool. I love giving back, but it's more about what the experience that our kids are having that make this such a special place within CTE and Roundrock ISD.
I absolutely love that. And you mentioned a piece that to me sounds just ever, so appropriate, um, with regards to, well, I guess there's actually a few things that you mentioned, but, I'm glad to see that there's that balance of, seeing the direct impact to the end user. And like you said, it's not just about, place or position, but it really is about the impact. I'm glad you get a chance to, brag as well, because again, for us, it really, really what we really want to focus on is again education being a conversation that we see as the great kind of lever that can really impact the future. I heard a saying before, and I always like to reiterate: education reaches into the future. And so, in that same regard, I love the fact that you all have that intentionality with regards to trainers and teachers. That focused aspect as it relates to not only their ability to stay up to date, but that overall experience for the student is huge. Of course, we mentioned this as well, the AI aspect as well is going to be something that continues to change and adapt how we not only do work but see education. And it sounds like of course you all are keeping that component, excuse me, focal and top of mind as it relates to upcoming planning and going into the future as well. Um, I'll pause to see if there's anything that you want to leave the audience with as it relates to, again, the listeners that are out there, whether they're parents or educators themselves, anything that you like to share with them, whether it's a, word of encouragement or advice or even, a question, for food for thought.
Yeah, I think just to encourage everybody to stay engaged within CTE and seeing all of the opportunities that it can bring for students in your community. Being open to working, if you're a business partner, and being able to open to working with your local ISD or city schools, whatever it looks like in your area. But working with those folks and being able to bring up that next group of students that are going to be part of our workforce, just supporting that. Understanding that it is really hard to be an educator. I'm not in the classroom, and so my life looks a lot different than a teacher in the classroom. My husband is a welding teacher in
Yeah.
another district, and so I get to hear often about firsthand what it's like to be a teacher outside of just my own, right? But I hear about it at home. It's hard, and just appreciating teachers as a society, but especially if you have kids of your own, whatever level it is, if it's pre-K through 12 or beyond, just saying thank you to a teacher, because it's not easy, and I don't think it's going to get any easier. But teachers want to be there, and so just being appreciative and supporting career and tech by getting involved in some way. So, food for thought. I don't have a good question for a food for thought.
No
Just
worries.
stay engaged and support.
I thank you. That I think that's a great way to again just remind everyone to your point earlier comment. Even some of the educators are there after a second career, but of course whether it's their tenured past or their kind of updated career, they're contributing back in such a meaningful way So I love that mindset, and definitely will, just further second that same statement as well for the audience and the listeners. Again, this has been a very, insightful conversation. I've definitely learned a lot. I know for sure. I might have mentioned this in a previous. I haven't mentioned this in our previous conversation, but I know for sure I'll be in the Austin region, so I look forward to potentially
Oh,
coming out and saying hello and
yeah, we'd
touring
love to
or
have you.
South by type time frame. So yeah, thank you. And for our listeners, thank you again for just listening to and tuning in for another episode of the District Dialogue podcast. We're excited to bring these types of conversations to you all. If you'd like to make any recommendations or have any questions for topics or guests, feel free to reach out to us on any of our platforms at the Community Foundation or via email at info@community.co, and that's with an X, CXMM dot MM dot NIUTY dot CO. And we look forward to hearing back from each of you all. Thank you, and see you all next week.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Julian.